The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, figuring they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
And this time, I am back. I'm back until late October, taking most of the last 2 weeks off, which is a compression of vacation that I don't usually take. Just the way things worked out this year. I had my annual Vermont trip at the beginning of the month. And then last weekend, a wonderful thing, my son got legally married in Seattle to his now wife, the lovely Nicole Lee. And they will have the grand celebration wedding in Cabo. But in case you don't know, if you're planning a wedding out of the country, to make it legal, you got to get married in the country. So we schlepped out to Seattle this past weekend. The family had a great time, and good to be back and tackle everything that's going on in the sports world and everything else. And we got quarterback stability for now. We'll see. Keep your fingers crossed, because Jayden Daniels will become the 8th different starting quarterback over the last 8 seasons for the Washington Commanders. Ever since they booted Kirk Cousins out of town, it has been one thing after another, and there has been absolutely no stability at the position, including Ryan Fitzpatrick lasting 16 plays. So keep your fingers crossed and hope that this is going to last a long time. But it became official yesterday when Dan Quinn announced, yes, indeed, Jayden Daniels will be the starting quarterback. And as John Hausman once said, he earned it.
Smith Barney. They make money the old-fashioned way. They earn it.
They earn it. And this was Dan Quinn yesterday making the announcement that, in fact, Jayden Daniels had earned the starting position.
He didn't miss a beat, hit the targets that, we had put in front of him. We talked about the practices against the other teams, the games, so he's ready and he's earned the right to do that. He's really put in the work while being surrounded by some excellent teammates here, and in that case, I wanted to make sure I singled one of them out. In a perfect scenario, a young QB would, have a leader to also learn from, but perfect rarely happens. But we do have that in Marcus Mariota. And him sharing 9 years of gold with Jayden, I think, has been something that's really cool for us to see. Rookie QBs usually don't get that, and we do. And when QB rooms are special, that energy can be felt throughout an entire team, and we have that. So really cool to say. So apologies for having you come up with new storylines for today. But Jayden Daniels is our starting quarterback.
Yes, he is the starting quarterback, and he was asked, Quinn was, what about the team? Have you told them? He says, I think they could figure it out, as every one of us could. But it's just really what it was they knew this was going to be the conclusion. It's just how they were going to get there. And look, the sample size is small. Jayden Daniels has played 3 drives. He's been solid on those 3 drives, 10 of 12 for 78 yards. He scored a touchdown on his own. He led a field goal drive. But these are the days of very limited play in the preseason. Michael Penix, who they hope, I guess, won't play this year in Atlanta, that Kirk Cousins will stay healthy. But Penix will end the preseason without taking a snap. That's the plan that they have in place. They're using this as a complete redshirt year. That wasn't going to be the case with Jayden Daniels, just a question of when he was going to start. And I don't think it would have been the worst thing in the world if Marcus Mariota started the opener in Tampa and that they brought him along to the point where they felt 100% confident. But all the things that you heard about him during the offseason, that he was showing up at 5 o'clock in the morning, putting in the work, a great teammate, someone who is very well respected and very humble. So it's, this will be the first time that they will start a rookie quarterback in the opener. Remember, Dwayne Haskins didn't start the opener as a rookie. It's first time since RG3 in 2012. And you remember this, Mike Shanahan was a veteran coach like Dan Quinn. He had 2 Super Bowls in his pocket from Denver. But he saw what he had in RG3 and the insecurity, and because he had drafted Kirk Cousins in the 4th round, and that gave Griffin Spielkes, he decided, okay, we're just going to name him the starter in rookie minicamp, as the Bears have done with Caleb Williams. So far, so good on Caleb Williams. So far, so good on Jayden Daniels. But remember, this is just preseason play, and a lot of the players that they're playing against, even though they start the games, these are backup guys that they're not necessarily going to be seeing. The live bullets start to fly next month. But the way this thing played out, it seemed like this was a very good and well-thought-out plan, and had the complete buy-in from everybody, including Jayden Daniels. He in fact, said he was pleased that he had earned the job.
100%. For me, it's like what DQ and them said early on, man, they got a plan. And, they didn't want to go out there and, oh, hey, you're the starter. I didn't come here. I haven't earned anything. What I did in college was great. Now it's time for a new slate, clean slate. So coming in, I got to prove not only to myself, not only to the coaches, but to my teammates, earn the respect of those guys, because some of those guys were drafted in the same position as me. They had to work for everything they had. For me to come in there, and if DQ and them were going to preach competition, and you got to earn everything, man. They can't come in and just give me the job right away, so I got to go earn it.
Yeah, maybe it's partly the way his career played out in college. Remember, if he'd have come out after the 2022 season, come out in the 2023 draft, he would have been a 4th or 5th round pick. He would not have been drafted nearly as high as he was. And we had Mel Kiper on just before the draft, and he said that Daniel's mother called him before what would have been his 5th year playing in college football, and his 3rd year, I guess, or 2nd year playing at LSU, and 3rd year, I guess. And he said, Mel said, look, 3rd, 4th round, 3rd round, best case scenario. So he went back to school as the number 2 pick of the draft. And so he's been through the process of having to earn his spot in the draft, which is something that they really didn't have with RG3. I mean, he might not have been, of course, he couldn't come out. He had a year where he was injured, and then he played, 2 years? I mean, he played 3 years. So maybe it was 4 years in college. Theoretically, I guess, could have come out after his 2nd year of playing, but stayed for another year and won the Heisman Trophy. How did this play out? How did he tell Jayden Daniels that he was going to be the starter? This is Quinn on how he told him.
I went to the quarterback room and just spent some time, and we had talked first about the process going from Jet Week into Miami Week, even as much as like warming up, and what did that look like? So I asked him to make some changes or assess what he liked and what needed to do different. I said that's what preseason games are for, to find out whether we're playing at 1 o'clock or 7 o'clock or 4 o'clock. This happens 2 hours before the game. This is 1:45, and so we went through that process together. And then I just said, man, I'm naming you the starter today. And the name of our whole program will be about competition, and you've absolutely crushed it and earned it, and so it's time to do that. And so I wanted just to let him know that that's always what we're going to stand for. And so it was a cool moment, but one that he had absolutely earned.
All right. React from Daniels. Obvious question after hearing that from Quinn.
Knowing it's going to happen, and the fact that it does, still, it's when a coach, and he shared with us that in the quarterback room, after asking about the process and pregame and stuff like that, he said, you're going to be the guy. When you hear those words, immediately what hits you?
Just joy and happiness to be able, like I said, to live out a dream that I dreamt about. But also, man, it's just I couldn't be here without anybody. Like, I couldn't do it on my own. Like, family, support system, the organization here, Mr. Harris and all of them for drafting me, and even the people in the quarterback room. I mean, shout out to Marcus for taking me under his wing and being a great mentor. Jeff Driscoll, man, they looking out for me and helping me out a lot.
And he also talked about the culture of this team. We've seen guys, beat up Tresway after a tackle. We saw you jump up and down at the end of the game when Trace McSorley, of all people, almost led a game-tying drive. What's, for you, that vibe of your teammates is what?
We enjoy being around each other. We I mean, that's the camaraderie that we're building in the locker room. Be able to go out there and see each other have success and want success for each other. It's big in the locker room. It's a brotherhood that we love each other. We want the best for each other. We're going to push each other.
So off we go with Jayden Daniels. And think about this. With all the quarterback instability that we've had here over the last 30-plus years, there was a time in this town where there was unbelievable stability at quarterback. Starting in 1964, when the Redskins had traded a young quarterback, Norm Snead had been a starter for 3 years. He was a draft pick who started instantly for what were terrible teams. I mean, his rookie year, 1961, they went 1-12-1. They were god-awful because they had been all white. They were still all white then. 1962, Bobby Mitchell came in, other African-American players, and things started to improve a little bit. But once Sonny Jurgensen came here as the veteran from Philadelphia in 1964, he was the starter for, most of the next decade. He had some injuries in the early 70s. Billy Kilmer coming over in a trade that George Allen made. The Saints were anxious to discard him since they had drafted Archie Manning. And then Joe Theismann, who was unbelievably durable until he broke his leg in 1985. So between 1964 and 1985, you had three quarterbacks, essentially. There were a couple of starts by others. Randy Johnson may have had a couple. I think Harry Theophilides filled in for Jurgensen in the late 60s for a couple of games. But by and large, those were your three guys. None of them were drafted by the team. Sonny came in a trade. Kilmer came in a trade. And Joe Theismann, who had been drafted by Miami, yes, they gave up a first-round pick to get him. Dolphins still had his rights after he'd played 3 years in Canada. But these were all guys who were traded for. And think about this. If you're looking for an elite quarterback for this franchise, whatever the name was, Redskins, Washington football team, Commanders, you might have to go back to Sammy Baugh, who was, I think, the sixth pick of the 1937 draft, started as a rookie, led the Redskins to the championship, won another championship in 1942, and at 1950 was named the greatest professional football player of the first half of the 20th century. He was a great, great quarterback, Hall of Famer. Kirk Cousins, starting for 3 years. Mark Rippon, couple of years, maybe 3 years as the starter. Hasn't been much. So, this could be really groundbreaking for this team that if, in fact, Jayden Daniels becomes at the level of, let's say, a Joe Burrow or Josh Allen or pie in the sky hopes he's the next Patrick Mahomes, well, realize the number of years between those players who are drafted by the franchise. Yes, Sonny Jurgensen's in the Hall of Fame. Yes, Joe Theismann took them to 2 Super Bowls. Billy Kilmer took them to 1. But those guys were traded for. It's a different story. So the drafting of quarterbacks here has not been good, not been all that good. And although I guess, could make the connection that Norm Snead was a first-round pick. I believe he was number one. And then was traded for Jurgensen, which was a great trade and someone who gave us a lot of excitement here. Didn't win a whole lot, relatively. I mean, he won some big games, but he did not ever start a playoff game in Washington, and really played on teams that were subpar with coaching carousels going on. Not all of it, intentional. Vince Lombardi sadly died after only 1 year with the team. He and George Allen butted heads, and he was hurt a lot when Allen was here. But, Daniels has a chance to do something that just hasn't been done here. And so far, so good, but you got to remember that these are preseason games. These are preseason practices. They've been very careful about how they've brought him along, and we'll see what happens. It's going to be a lot different than I think it'll be a lot different than it was with Robert Griffin. If you recall, yes, he was named the starter in rookie minicamp, took all the first-team snaps, seemed to handle himself incredibly well in front of the media because he's very good at that. He's good at talking, even though he's now lost his job with ESPN. But what happened in the opener against the New Orleans Saints and Drew Brees, That was a stunner because we hadn't seen any of that in the preseason. The pistol offense that they ran, that was all new stuff, and that took everybody by surprise. And here's the other thing about Griffin that's when you look back on this, they were 3-6 with him as the starter. He was spectacular. He was great, but the team was 3-6. They go into a bye week. Mike Shanahan's talking about evaluating players for next year, and to his credit, Griffin said, well, I'm going to take the bye week, and I'm going to come back, and I'm going to do everything I can to get this team into the playoffs. And they did. They won 7 straight games, and they got in. Now, Griffin got hurt along the way, and because of his insecurity, insisted on playing against Seattle when he was hurt, and that was sort of the beginning of the end. But that was a team that was, really a surprise team in that Griffin was that good, was that effective, running an offense which hadn't been seen before in the NFL. And what we have now with Jayden Daniels, he's coming into an NFL 12 years later, which has changed a great deal, in part because of Griffin and in part because of other quarterbacks like Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes and others who can run. And so we'll see how, like we say in the sports radio business, we'll see how it all plays out. But the conclusion that was reached yesterday, or that was announced yesterday by Dan Quinn, I don't think surprises anyone. There is a little sticky issue, though, regarding Jayden Daniels. One about sliding. We'll get to that as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
60 years ago today, our harmonica changed the fortunes of the New York Yankees. We'll get to that in the next hour. Back in the saddle here after some extended vacation. I was off most of the last 2 weeks, but ready for the run of football, and won't be off again until late October into the first couple of days in November, and that'll be it, because I really don't like to take time off during the football season, but there are circumstances that make that possible, not necessary this year, but in a good way. My son will have his big wedding in Cabo in November. Anyway, before we get to an issue that I think we have to think about with Jayden Daniels, and it was really what was the end for Robert Griffin III when he was the quarterback here for the 2012 season and never reached that level again. Let me give you a couple of thoughts on the game. Got back at DVR'd it and watched it yesterday. The wide receiver battle is really interesting here. In that Jahan Dotson, who was a first-round pick 2 years ago, I guess maybe 3 years ago now. This would be his third season. This is beginning to look like another blown Ron Rivera pick. I mean, if you look at his draft record. Man, top to bottom, just I mean, he looked as a rookie like he was going to develop into a great receiver, maybe at some point be number one after Terry McLaurin's deal ends. He's not number two now, and at the moment doesn't look like he has much chance to be number two. De'Ami Brown, who's sort of a forgotten guy, he's going into his fourth year here, the last year of his deal. And seemingly was on his way out the door. I didn't even think he was going to make the team this year. And he's emerging as number two. It's interesting that the first 2 passes of the game were thrown to him by Jayden Daniels. There's some type of trust that seems to be developing there that he does not have with Dotson. And Dotson was targeted, I think, once in the game. Only once, maybe twice. So that's something to think about, that the number 2 receiver battle, and that's why they brought in Martavis Bryant last week, because they're unsure there. And if I don't even know if they could trade trade Dotson at this point. I don't even think that's in the cards there. And I assume he's going to be on the team. He's a first-round pick, so he's got a year this year and next year on his contract, and then they have to make a decision on picking up the 5th-year option after this year. I don't know. Doesn't look good so far. Number one, not number one, but certainly high up on the list is they got to find a kicker. And Riley Patterson, not the answer. He was wide left from 49 and wide right from 43. He did make 2 field goals. He missed one against the Jets. They cannot have enough confidence in him. And what Dan Quinn essentially said yesterday is, in the old days, they would have a couple of cuts. And the first one, you'd get down to 75 with the roster, having to be at 53. I think it's a week from today. And that you probably would find kickers there. But now, when there's only one cut and you have to get down to 53 from 90 a week from today, you kind of have to ride this out. Like, they don't want to, I don't think they want to be claiming kickers at this point who don't have a chance to make the team. I think what they want is to be able to look at the whole league, see who is going to be available, and pick and choose from that. They may even claim a couple of them along the way, because this has really turned into a mess, and Riley Patterson is not the answer. So they've got to find something there. As far as tackling goes, this is an issue for Quinn. Some of the backups didn't look very good, but Frankie Louvu is a tackler. That's good, and he's fast from side to side. He has looked good in the 2 preseason games. They're in love with Mikey Sandestrill, the second-round pick from Michigan. He's small, but he's tough. Now, is he going to be durable? We'll see. He's a former wide receiver who's turned into what they call the nickel corner now, the nickel back, I guess. And he is not only proven that he can cover, but he makes tackles. And hopefully he's got the good form to stay healthy, because that's going to be a factor there. The more I watch Brian Robinson, the more I realize what a complete disaster it was last year with the offense. Just absolutely ridiculous that they threw the ball more than any other team in the league. And Brian Robinson is a guy who moves the pile. He's a guy, he should have a 1,000-yard season this year. Not that that's any great shakes in 17 games, but he hasn't come close to it because they haven't given him the ball enough. That was really eye-opening how good he is as a runner. And remember, 2 years ago in his rookie year, he got shot and missed the first 4 games, played pretty well after coming back from that, but admitted he wasn't 100%. So last year in his second year, he should have been ready to run, and he should have had the ball in his hands. But Eric Bieniemy, a former running back himself, just wanted to throw the ball all the time with a quarterback who was inexperienced. Didn't make any sense whatsoever. So I think you're going to see a much more balanced offense this year, and I really like what I'm seeing from Brian Robinson so far. And then in the secondary, it's obvious that they still have some issues there. Percy Butler got beat. But Quan Martin, who at this time last year was looking kind of shaky, he's solid now at safety. And I remember seeing Chris Sims talking about the draft, and he said he looked to him, Quan Martin, he thought was the number 1 defensive back in the draft. Didn't look that way this time last year, but at this point, again, it's exhibition play. Hard to tell on a lot of things, but he looks like he's going to be a guy who they can count on in the secondary with a lot of question marks there. So, there are things that have to be sorted out, and don't be surprised if they claim somebody off of waivers. I think there's a lot of questions in the secondary, but Quan Martin and Mikey Sandestrill are 2 guys that can be counted on. Here's the issue that I think lingers with Jayden Daniels. And how this is going to look once the real games start next month is going to be fascinating to watch. But there are YouTube tapes of him just getting blown up while he's playing at LSU. He took some massive hits. Now, you could say, yeah, he's durable. He knows how to take a hit. But on the other hand, this is the NFL. Guys are bigger, stronger, faster. And the injury thing for a quarterback who's everything now to an NFL team, there's no position more important in sports than the starting quarterback. And you got to protect him. It's 17 games now. It's not going to be long before it's 18 games. And the teams that have the healthy elite quarterbacks at the end of the year are the ones who are going to have the best chance to win the Super Bowl. See Kansas City Chiefs with Mahomes, Patrick. I mean, it's he's the difference. He's the deal there, and that's why they have to keep him healthy. So, in this game, in his second drive, Jayden Daniels on a keeper has a chance to slide or go down, and he doesn't do it. And this was Dan Quinn's reaction in Miami on Saturday night to his hope of the future, driving his shoulder into a defensive back to pick up a couple extra yards.
Double secret probation he is on, all right? And But no, for him, I thought he had another really good outing, honestly. I don't know passing-wise what it was, but the accuracy, the decision-making of where to go, he really is a unique competitor. And but yes, he was definitely in trouble again with the head coach.
You going from Top Gun to Animal House?
That's exactly right. So he does not have a 0.0. I will absolutely assure you of that. But yeah, did that come out on the TV that I was telling him to slide or get down? Is that okay? There we go.
Yeah. It was obvious. So Daniels asked about this. Was not exactly apologetic about defying the orders of the coach to get down.
It's a constant battle between me and him. It's a fine line of knowing when to take your chances and when to get down. Right there, I honestly didn't think there was a lot of people by me. So after I got tackled, I went down a little bit. He's on the sideline like, get down. And so that's just our little joke that we have going on.
How do you balance that going forward, knowing when to get out of bounds or get down or just play your game?
I mean, still learning. God blessed me with a gift. So I don't want to take that away. I know that they don't want it to be taken away, but it's fine line saying healthy, longevity, and stuff like that.
Is that a struggle for a guy who's got the physical gift?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very competitive, so I want to make explosive plays, score a lot of touchdowns, things like that. So I think that's what kind of gives me my competitive side.
It's all fun and games until somebody puts an eye out. And, it's a little joke now in the preseason. But once the regular season starts, he's got to learn how to protect himself. He was, 8 or 9 years old when Robert Griffin III was killing his career by, doing things like standing on the sideline, hoping for a late hit, plowing into the end zone. They even used him. I remember they used him in a game against Pittsburgh his rookie year as a wide receiver, and he got ear hold. I mean, you just don't do that. So, this is something that I think could be an issue going forward, given the history of Daniels and given that there is this, little tug of war going on with the coach about this. But this was yesterday when Daniels spoke after he was named the starting quarterback. And this question and then the answer. Now, Daniels is not the most loquacious guy. He doesn't give, 2-minute answers, but he will answer a question pretty thoroughly, I think, in most cases. Listen to his response to this question.
Do you actually practice slider? Have you ever practiced sliding?
Nah, I haven't.
Nah, I haven't. Why not? Why not? That is as important a part of a running quarterback's game as anything. And I watched the first episode of Hard Knocks last night with the Chicago Bears, and Caleb Williams is practicing sliding on a slip and slide. That little kid's toy where you hook the hose up to it and the water's just sort of, runs over a mat and you can slide down. They practice that. They should be practicing that with Jayden Daniels. And this dismissive answer that he gave, nah, I haven't. Meaning, I don't know why you asked me that, because I can, or, he hasn't played baseball. Russell Wilson was a baseball player, good enough to play in the minor leagues. He was, I think, didn't he play in the Rangers system or one of the systems when he was going to college? And Jayden Daniels, I don't think has played any baseball. And if he doesn't learn how to slide, that's going to be a real problem. The extra yards that he fought for at LSU, it worked out. He didn't get hurt. He won the Heisman Trophy. All that's fine. But if he has problems protecting himself in the NFL, look out. So this is something to keep an eye on. This is I think, the most troubling issue at the moment with Jayden Daniels. All the other boxes are checked. Putting in the hard work, coming in 5 o'clock in the morning, being a good teammate, being humble, performing. He has performed in the 3 drives that he's played for Washington so far in the preseason. All those things have been good. Everything about him has been good so far, but this is something that I think they have to be concerned about, and they have to convince him that, as the old cliche goes, discretion is the better part of valor. Couple of other things to catch up on that I saw when I was out and would want to comment on. This is from the weekend. The NFL calls special owners meeting for possible vote on private equity issue. They pretty much bumped their heads on the ceiling of what an individual can pay for a team. The Commanders selling for over $6 billion last year. That was just a year after the Denver Broncos sold for $4.6 billion. So in the course of a year, now you could say the Washington market is bigger than Denver's and all that, and potentially this is a much bigger moneymaker owning the Washington team rather than the Denver team. But think about the jump there, $4.6 billion to $6 billion in a year. And this story by Mark Maskey and Nikki Javala saying that they're now looking at the idea of having private equity firms invest because, outside of Jeff Bezos, there aren't many people in the world that can write a check like that. And here is the greed game that goes on in the NFL right now. Here's how good things are at the moment for the NFL. Owners were pleased with the sale to Harris, but there was some disappointment that Dan Snyder was unable to prompt a $7 billion bid for the Commanders by Amazon founder Jeff Bezos, a person familiar with the owner's views said at the time. Some analysts maintained during the process that the rules reduced the pool of prospective bidders and perhaps suppressed the sale price. So what they're looking for is people, groups that can actually afford these prices, $6 billion plus. I would imagine if the Cowboys went up for sale now, they would top $10 billion, and who knows how high they could go. And so they want a bigger pool of bidders for this. I mean, things are so good that they look at $6 billion and go, yeah, probably could have gotten $7 billion, but the rules don't allow that. Roger Goodell told CNBC last month that the league initially might limit a private equity to 10%. In May, Goodell said there are a lot of private equity firms, the larger ones, that have a great deal of interest in this. He added it was fair to say that the owners agree with the direction that we're going. Well, of course they agree with that because they are making money hand over fist, and they actually realize that they made a bad deal with the TV networks. They're not getting enough money. If the NBA is getting $7 billion, they're getting 10, 11 billion, and they're drawing in numbers that are triple and quadruple of what they're getting. So the money is just flowing. The cash is unbelievable in the NFL right now, and they're trying to figure out how to get even more for the franchises. But yeah, if the Cowboys went up for sale and Jeff Bezos wasn't interested in buying them, could they get maximum dollar with the way things are set up right now? There are limits on how much they can borrow. No ownership group can exceed 25 people, including the lead investor. The group cannot borrow more than $1.4 billion, an amount raised at the May meeting from $1.2 billion to buy the team. No private equity firms, public corporations, or sovereign wealth firms can own shares. Well, that's obviously going to change because they realize that they're cutting themselves short, that they can make even more money. And the other thing, and I haven't actually seen this in action. I watched the two Commanders games. I really haven't watched much else preseason. I guess I watched a couple of quarters of the Hall of Fame game. But these Guardian caps, the big fluffy caps that they're wearing on top of the helmets, they're mandatory in practice now, and they're starting to be worn in preseason games, and they are going to be allowed in regular season games. We'll see how many players do this, but it looks like there's going to be at least a few. The NFL, this is from Maskey's story in the Post, the NFL said in April the players' helmet options for this season include 5 newly developed helmets that outperformed all previous helmets in lab testing and simulated on-field collisions. The league said it would waive the requirement to wear Guardian caps during practices for players who chose one of the 6 specified new helmet models, and more than 200 players have switched. That's a significant number, 200 players. I didn't think it would be that high because, guys get used to what they're wearing. Some of them wear the same ones that they wore in college, and to be able to adapt to a new helmet is a bigger deal than you might think. Also, these guardian caps are starting to be used more in high schools and college, so players are more familiar with them. The NFL estimates that the force of an impact is reduced by about 20% if both players involved in a collision are wearing guardian caps. According to the league's injury data, players at the position groups required to wear guardian caps experience an approximately 50% decrease in the rate of concussions during the preseason practices over the last 2 years. Now, the numbers, they're not going to blow you away. The league said in February that according to injury data, players suffered 219 concussions during the regular season and preseason practices and games last year, about the same as the 2013 from 2022. From 2015 to 2017, the annual number of concussions was as high as 281. So the difference between 281 and 213 is, I guess, significant, 219. But again, you're still having concussions, and there also are players, I believe, and if you've heard some of them talk about this, that a lot of these go unreported. You've heard players say, like, if you're not seeing stars like 5 or 6 times a game, you're not playing hard enough. You're not going to be in the league very long. It's all part of playing football. And with all these guardian caps and the new helmets, all that's fine. But you have to realize that the brain floats in fluid. And when there is a collision, no matter how much padding you have, there is a slamming of the brain against the skull. And you do that enough times, and some of these guys, like Junior Seau, who committed suicide, shot himself in the chest so they could examine his brain, never had a reported concussion. And some of these players who play even a short period of time, some of them just play college football, they have had enough collisions, not necessarily resulting in concussions, but enough collisions that there is cumulative damage on the brain. So I look at this, kind of, out of the corner of my eye and go, well, yeah, it's a lot of smoke and mirrors here. And when they have these guardian caps on, maybe the impression is that they're making the league safe for everybody. And all this, flag football talk that we're hearing now, it's going to become an Olympic sport, apparently. They're going to have NFL. The league, I think, is going to push hard for this. They're going to want NFL players playing a safe form of football to show everybody, hey, Mom, sign the release form, because there's no injuries here. It's all fun and games, flag football. I question what the long-term effect of this is going to be. And here's something else. Even though you're not allowed to have helmet-to-helmet contact, I think with this padding, there may be a false sense of security with some of these guys. And, when they go for the tackle around the knees or whatever, they are more likely to use their helmet in a way that is not as protective as it used to be. Mike Ditka said this years ago. He said, you want to cut down on concussions? Take the face mask away, right? Because you're not going to lead with your head anymore. Well, that's not going to happen, obviously. But whether these, guardian caps are going to make football safe for everybody, we'll have to see. And again, we have to look at the long-term effects too. It's not necessarily guys who get out of football and have remained seemingly healthy. It's what happens down the road. And there's another big front-page story in the Post today about players who are trying to collect, and their families trying to collect on the settlement that the league reached with the Players Association, giving them over $1 billion, players in need of money because of health concerns. And what they find is the NFL fights them along the way, and when they put in their claims for, needs, whether it's, head injuries or other problem, knees, back, whatever, the league fights them on it, and they don't get it. They don't want to open the door for more settlements and more money and all that, because let's face it, football is a game that takes a big toll. And Bob Costas essentially was pushed out the door by NBC for saying this, but Costas said football scrambles brains, and he was right. So you remember when Brian Flores was fired as coach of the Miami Dolphins after the 2021 season, a lot of people went, what? Yeah, I thought he did a good job there. What's going on there? And then he wound up suing for racial discrimination. I don't know where that suit is right now, but that's when they hired Mike McDaniel, and McDaniel has not only done a good job with the team, he's really gotten Tua Tagovailoa on track, and he earned a big contract that he just signed an extension there, 4-year extension, did that last month. And he was on the Dan Le Batard show yesterday, Tua Tagovailoa. And they got to talking about, how things have progressed in his career, that he had kind of a rough start to it. At one point, Ryan Fitzpatrick was playing ahead of him for a guy who was, a top 10 draft pick, I think. Remember the tank for Tua, and then he hurt his hip and, kind of slid down a little bit. But now he's got his career on track. And he's talking to Le Batard about how McDaniel has helped him, and then threw this shot at the ex-coach, Brian Flores.
To put it in simplest terms, if you woke up every morning and I told you you suck at what you did, that you don't belong doing what you do, that you shouldn't be here, that this guy should be here, that you haven't earned this right, and then you have somebody else come in and tell you, dude, you are the best fit for this. Like, you are accurate, you are the best whatever, you are this, you are that. Like, how would it make you feel listening to one or the other? You see what I'm saying? And then you hear it, regardless of what it is, the good or the bad. And you hear it more and more. You start to actually believe that. I don't care who you are. You could be the president of the United States. You have a terrible person that's telling you things that you don't want to hear, or that you probably shouldn't be hearing. You're going to start to believe that about yourself. And so that's sort of like what ended up happening. And it was, it's basically been, 2 years of training that out of not just me, but, a couple of the guys as well that have been here since my rookie year all the way till now.
Terrible person. Ooh, that's the takeaway. So we haven't heard yet from Brian Flores, who's now the defensive coordinator with the Minnesota Vikings. He is due to meet with reporters sometime today, but the head coach of the Vikings, Kevin O'Connell, also once part of the staff here under Mike Shanahan, says, I can tell you that the players that Flo works with, that would be Flores, he's got great relationships here. He really has. I've heard a lot of them talk about how much they enjoy playing for him, how much I enjoy working with him every day, and that's all I can really comment on. I just like to leave it at that. So we'll see what Flores says in response to what Tua said, but boy, that came out of nowhere, and you don't usually hear that from players. Maybe he wanted to wait until he signed his contract extension. Maybe he felt particularly comfortable with Le Batard and his crew doing that. I saw the video of this. They were sitting on a couch, and maybe he forgot he was talking on the record. I don't know, but you don't usually hear that. Terrible person, and that Flores being a defensive guy, maybe he thought that was the best way to coach Tua. Clearly it wasn't. McDaniel has talked a lot about relationships and the way he's able to do that with his players. So, maybe that's a big part of it too. You just got to know how to coach him. But he did play for Nick Saban. Maybe Saban does some of the same things that McDaniel does. I don't know. But, that was Tua yesterday. Coming up, more from Dan Quinn on the decision to make Jayden Daniels the starting quarterback for the opener, and how things are changing in the college football landscape. Stay with us. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630. So you know what's left of the Pac-12? The Pac-2. Yeah. Oregon State, Washington State. They still exist as a conference. That's part of the college football picture as we head into this season, which, by the way, starts this weekend. Yeah. Before the end of August, we get rolling. Used to be Labor Day. No, it's getting earlier and earlier, and the season's getting longer and longer now with the 12-team playoffs. Steve Sarkisian on the Dan Patrick Show yesterday talking about their move to the SEC. They used to be in the Big 12. Now they're in the SEC. Everything is topsy-turvy, and it's all about the money chase. And Oklahoma and Texas are now playing in the same conference as Alabama and Auburn and Georgia and the whole Megillah. So we'll get to that. The big news, of course, is that there is a quarterback who has been named a starter for Washington, and to nobody's surprise, it is Jayden Daniels. There was a quote-unquote open competition between Daniels and Marcus Mariota, but everybody knew that the goal was, including Marcus Mariota, the goal was to named Jayden Daniels the starting quarterback. And there wasn't any hint of problems along the way. Everything we heard was all positive. The time he was putting in, coming in at 5 o'clock in the morning, still doing that, preparing, studying film, working with Luke McCaffrey, who was a third-round pick, the way he has supported his teammates. If you watch through, and man, the toughest thing probably to watch in sports is the fourth quarter of an exhibition game. But if you stayed for it, you saw Marcus Mariota was hurt, but you saw Jayden Daniels really rooting on his teammates and hoping that they would score a touchdown. He's all in, and so everything has moved in the direction that Dan Quinn hoped it would. He said he checked all the boxes, all the progressions, all the marks that they wanted him to hit. He hit, but he was asked yesterday in announcing that Daniels will be the starter for the opener in Tampa next month. What was the point? At what point did you know 100% that was going to be your guy?
The practice before we left to go down to Miami was the best one I had seen from him on the Tuesday prior to us leaving that Wednesday. The command of it, the accuracy, the details of it, that was one of the best practices I'd seen him have, was the best practice I'd seen him have. And so I think that was more in line with, who he is, what he does, the checks, the calls, the communication, the delivery of the ball. He was just really on point. So it was just cool to see all of that, come to life.
Has anything about this surprised you about where he's at in his development?
It didn't surprise me. We knew we would get here, but we were just excited to see how we would. And so seeing him hit all the spots, this is a rare competitor. And those are the things that I knew about him, but seeing it in your own building, on your own team, around new teammates, that was cool to see. And so he's just, had a remarkable start to things here. He's earned the respect of teammates and coaches and people inside of the building. And he's very, thankful to be part of a, group that, with the quarterback and the coaches and, helping him get ready. That's a big deal too.
So he is the starting quarterback. And in most cases, what you'll hear, starting quarterback, he's the leader of the team. Doesn't matter if he's a rookie. He's the one that everybody looks up to. He's the one that leads the team. Well, listen to Quinn on this. This I thought was interesting yesterday in that you would think he would say, okay, that's our guy. Everybody follow along with Jayden Daniels. That's not the approach that Quinn has taken here.
He doesn't have to be the leader of the team. He has to play his position well and be a great teammate. And on this team, and I had told the group earlier, my favorite part of this team and the best part of our team is the team. And so it's not that one person has to, put them on your back and say the things to bring everybody up in the huddle. What Jayden's got across is I've put the work in and people trust me, because they do. They've seen how hard he worked. They've seen him go deliver on that hard work at practice and through the preseason game. So as a young player, you're really trying to earn respect and to show that, I'll do things that you can count on. And that, to me, is what he's demonstrated to his teammates over and over again is, man, you can count on me. I'll make the right call, put us in the right play, make the right decisions. Past that, he's got his own connection with the guys. And even in his own rookie class, there's some other leaders that are emerging, guys like Sainer Still and others that have some of those same traits. So top of the pile, man, be a great teammate, play your spot well. There's other guys here that are ready to carry more of that. It'll come in time, but I didn't want to add extra onto him when we selected him. I just wanted him to be the best version of him right away, but he didn't have to take on more than was required.
Some guys run away from leadership. I remember when Chris Webber was with the Bullets, and he was the best player on the team, and they used to ask him about leadership, which he didn't really show. And he said, I'm just 24 years old, 25, and we got guys here 30, 31. I don't know if I can really lead them. So I didn't like that approach either. I kind of like what Daniels is saying about this, that you might think, well, okay, Dan Quinn says I don't have to be the leader, but I'm going to take that on. I'm going to do everything I can to be the leader of this team. It's sort of what he's saying, but he's also saying, okay, I'm willing to wait, and we'll see how it goes.
I'm a rookie, so I got to come out here and prove it. What I did in college doesn't matter. there's guys that's been in this league that are proven. So for me, it's just knowing my role. They weren't looking at me because I got drafted where I got drafted to come here and be a leader. We got great veterans around, and like I said, even Marcus, for him be able to go out there and take me under his wing, help mold me to be prepared, stuff like that, giving me pointers after plays, or we might see this look, you might have to do this and stuff like that. So we got great veterans around.
So you get named starting quarterback. Who was the first call, FaceTime, text message? Who'd you hit up right away? Really
nobody. I mean, I had meetings, so I couldn't do all that. But I'm pretty sure my phone is blowing up right now.
Yeah. Now, he mentioned Marcus Mariota. And Marcus Mariota, like Daniels, was a Heisman Trophy winner, was the number 2 pick of the draft by the Tennessee Titans. And when you take a player that high, the hope is that he becomes your franchise quarterback, that he has a 10 to 15-year run with your team, and you make runs at the Super Bowl, maybe you win a Super Bowl over that period of time. Marcus Mariota has transformed from being that guy who was supposed to take this team, his team, into the next generation and be remembered as one of the greats of all time playing for them. In his 9th year, he has become a journeyman backup. That's what he is. He's now, I think it's his 4th team in the last 4 years. It's his 3rd in the last. He was with Atlanta 2 years ago, barely played in Philadelphia last year, and now comes here and is the backup quarterback. He's a mentor. He's done everything he's asked, according to what Quinn says and according to what Daniels says. But is he more of a cautionary tale? Is he more of, I don't think it was, anything that he necessarily did. Like, Vince Young, who was once drafted by Tennessee, and Vince Young, to me, put on the greatest college performance I've ever seen. When Texas beat USC in the Rose Bowl in 2006, he was absolutely spectacular. And he was a first-round draft pick. I think he went 3 overall to them. And because of things that he was doing off the field and not concentrating enough on his play, he kind of flamed out. That's not the case with Mariota, but I don't think – I know they don't. The Commanders don't want Jayden Daniels to be Marcus Mariota. So on one hand, he is a mentor showing him the tricks of the trade and things that he's learned along the way. But on the other hand – he's not really the role model. I don't think. Doesn't seem like he should be the role model for Daniels. But this is Daniels describing what Marcus Mariota has meant to him so far.
Me and Marcus kind of got a similar story. I mean, we're blessed enough to win the Heisman, blessed enough to get drafted at the same spot. And, coming in early, I know that he had a lot of expectations on him, especially coming out as a rookie and get drafted that high. And he kind of felt like he had to wear the cape, stuff like that. So he's just giving me his experience through this time through the league, his knowledge, and he's been instrumental in my development so far here. Without him, I wouldn't be in this position right now. So, I appreciate Marcus always.
Yeah, so it's an interesting mentorship there. It's on one hand, let me show you how to do this, but on the other hand, well, I don't know if he actually says it this way, but let me help you avoid the pratfalls that had happened to me, and that I'm in this position now, 9 years into the league, kind of wandering from team to team as a backup quarterback. That's not where Jayden Daniels wants to be in 9 years. That's not where the Commanders want him to be. Now, Marcus Mariota did say this earlier in camp about the idea of Daniels starting right away as a rookie, and that he did the same thing. And, maybe in retrospect, was that a mistake? Could he have benefited from sitting behind another quarterback, as Patrick Mahomes did with Alex Smith for a year? He hardly played. Smith had a really good year, took him to the playoffs, but they realized that Mariota was ready to go, so they shipped Alex Smith off to Washington. And so I just look at that and say, well, is that the better way to do it? But Mariota said he actually thought he played his best football as a rookie. I don't know if that's agreed upon by other people who work with him, but that's how he felt about it. So he didn't think it was an issue starting first game as a rookie, as Daniels is now going to do. But Tom Brady, who had the benefit of not starting as a rookie. He was Drew Bledsoe's backup. Probably wouldn't have played for 3 years, maybe more, if Bledsoe hadn't got hurt his second year and Brady took over and took him to the Super Bowl. But Brady was on yesterday on a podcast that's done by Stephen A. Smith, and he talked about the quarterback position. This was really one of the more fascinating things I've ever heard Brady say, and hopefully a lot of this is going to come through when he starts his $37.5 million a year job with Fox, starting with the beginning of the football season next month. But this was Brady explaining the quarterbacking position and why it's so much different now than it was when he came into the league 24 years ago.
There used to be college programs. Now there are college teams. You're no longer learning a program, you're learning a playbook. And the program is ultimately, like at Michigan, for me, that was a pro-style program. 5 years I got to learn how to drop back pass, to read defenses, to read coverages, to be coached. I had to learn from being 7th quarterback on the depth chart to moving up to 3rd to ultimately being a starter. I had to learn all those things in college. That was development. Then I went to New England, and I was developed by Coach Belichick and the offensive staff there. I didn't start my first year. I think it's just a tragedy that we're forcing these rookies to play early, but the reality is the only reason why they are is because we dumbed the game down, which has allowed them to play. It used to be thought of at a higher level. We used to spend hours and hours in the offseason and training camp trying to be a little bit better than next year. But I think what happens is it discourages the coaches from going to deep levels because they realize the players don't have the opportunity to go to a deep level, so they're just going to teach them where they're at.
And that is the story of Robert Griffin III. The Shanahans knew that when they took him at number 2. He hadn't played in anything resembling a pro-style offense at Baylor. They didn't even have a playbook. They never huddled. They just used those cards on the sidelines, where they hold up like an avocado and a kumquat, and that was some type of a play. And so they knew that they were going to have to run a college system for him until he adjusted to the NFL. Well, that never happened because he decided after he got hurt, he and his dad, I want to snap my fingers and become Aaron Rodgers. Doesn't work that way. So Brady was asked to name. Now, I will say this about what he says there about how they've dumbed the game down. Brady couldn't run. He learned how to play quarterback and learned it as well as anybody, including someone who was a contemporary and Peyton Manning, who also couldn't run. They come to the line of scrimmage. They looked at the defense, pretty much knew what they were going to do, knew what they were going to do with the football, and were able to do that. Brady's asked yesterday by Stephen A. to name his top 5 quarterbacks. Not that this list is a surprise, but a couple of things to look at with these players that he lists. He lists Patrick Mahomes, number 1, Josh Allen of Buffalo, number 2, Lamar Jackson, who just won the MVP of Baltimore, number 3, Joe Burrow of Cincinnati, who's been to a Super Bowl, at 4, and Aaron Rodgers at number 5. And even Rodgers can run to a certain extent. Burrow maybe not quite as mobile as the other 3, but Mahomes, Allen, and Jackson can all run. So when you talk about dumbing the game down, you may be doing that, but they also have an element to their game that Brady and Manning didn't have. They didn't play that way. And so I think that's part of the evolution of the position. It's Mahomes is ridiculous to argue against that. 3 of the last 4 Super Bowls. Josh Allen, although he hasn't won as much, has that potential and the size to be great. Lamar Jackson has 2 MVPs, although his success rate in the playoffs hasn't been as great. Burrow having gone to a Super Bowl, Rodgers having won one. And he did note that different guys might have different moments in which they'd potentially move into the top 5, but as of now, this is his list. I would also say this about the 5. Mahomes sat for a year. Allen started as a rookie. Lamar sat for a year behind Joe Flacco. Joe Burrow started as a rookie. And Rodgers sat for 3 years. 3 years in Green Bay behind Brett Favre. So of the 5, 3 of them had to wait their turn to play. And to Brady's point, maybe it helped them to a great degree. Mahomes has always been praising of Alex Smith and what he did for him as a rookie. Lamar Jackson, although he was, the last player taken in the first round, he was still a first-round quarterback. and had to sit behind Joe Burrow. I had to sit behind Joe Flacco, and then Rodgers having to sit for 3. So interesting perspective there, I thought, from Tom Brady, but saying that the game has been dumbed down. Now, some of that may be, back in my day, and, we've heard quarterbacks over the years who, like, Sonny, when he played, he called his own plays. Bart Starr called his own plays. Johnny Unitas called his own plays. Well, the game changed. It evolved. It evolved during the 1970s when guys like Tom Landry were calling even Paul Brown back in the 50s was calling the plays from the sidelines for the Cleveland Browns. So the game always changes, but Brady has taken on the game is dumbed down. They don't do it the way they used to do it. Guys used to have to earn it over a long period of time. Well, we've seen Jayden Daniels earn it in the eyes of Dan Quinn. It's been over a short period of time, ever since he was drafted back in April. Anyway, that's a wrap for me. Back from vacation, not going anywhere for a while. Won't be out again until late October. Bram Weinstein now, the 11 o'clock show here. Tony Kornheiser at 2. And I will see you back here tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.